Can you travel abroad and departing the US while your marriage-based adjustment of status is pending? The answer is yes, but only with advance parole. Hi, I'm Soyuna Tak. I'm an attorney and one of the founders of Adam Law Group. We plan to release weekly videos about the law, and hopefully as the channel grows, we'll expand to include some of the other areas of the law that we work in. When I refer to you in this video, I'm talking about the adjustment applicant, which means from inside the US, you filed Form I-45 requesting permanent residence or the green card. And this would have been based on the I-130 petition filed by your spouse, either at the same time or before. So what happens if you travel without valid advance parole? Well, number one, your I-45, your green card application will be considered abandoned by immigration. So poof, there goes the time that you've invested thus far, as well as the over $1,000 filing fee. And that means you'll have to pursue consular processing for an immigrant visa. Secondly, you will most likely not be allowed back in the United States. Even if you have a valid 10-year multiple entry tourist visa on your passport, the CBP officer will see that you actually have immigrant intent because you had just requested permanent residence. So unless an exception to this would be if you have a dual intent visa, such as the H-1B or an L-1. But other than that, it would be very challenging for you to be allowed back in the country. And even worse, you may, by departing the United States, some of you may trigger a bar to reentry, such as a 3 or 10-year bar. So this is very serious. Now, since you have to pursue consular processing, so getting an immigrant visa, that means you have to wait for your I-130 to be adjudicated by USCIS because that won't be considered abandoned. That adjudication will continue. But you have to wait for that to be approved, hopefully. And once it is, it has to be sent over to the US Department of State, to the National Visa Center. And from then on, you'll do the consular processing for an immigrant visa. And that can take quite a while. So you and your spouse may have to be apart for 6 months, year and a half, or even longer, depending on where you're at in the process and the current processing times. So these are really serious consequences. And this is why there are people who, because they have not received their advance parole yet, in this process, they've had to miss family weddings or being by the side of a loved one who might be dying or miss their funerals. So this is no joke. But because of these serious consequences, you really want to think carefully before abandoning your green card application and departing the country by traveling without advance parole. So what is this advance parole that I keep referring to? Well, it's filed on Form I-131, and it's basically a request, that form, for interim travel permission. So the ability to travel outside of the United States and come back while you're in this green card process, that'll make it so that your green card application is not considered abandoned and you'll be able to return. One thing I want to point out here is that it's not enough to just have an approval notice of the advance parole. You actually need the advance parole document. And most commonly, that will be issued on what we refer to as a combo card, the EAD or your employment authorization document. So this is what it looks like. And you have to make sure that the proper notation, which states serves as I-512 advance parole, that notation must be on the EAD to be the valid evidence of your advance parole. Now, sometimes you may be issued a paper advance parole, and that is also fine, but it's not just the approval notice. The document actually must be the advance parole document itself. So we've had clients, especially right at the beginning of the pandemic, who received the approval notice for their combo card, for their employment authorization, which also has the advance parole notation on there. But the card production was held up, and they actually had to wait several months before receiving the card. And we made sure that they definitely do not travel based on the approval notice. Because if they did, I've heard of people who've tried to come back with the approval notice and were either not let in, or even if they were let back in, it caused problems for their green card process. You definitely don't want to be doing that. One thing I want to point out is also that the advance parole has an expiration date. So you want to make sure that it's valid and that you're entering prior to the expiration of the advance parole document. So let's talk about actually entering with advance parole. What does it mean? When you enter using advance parole, you'll be considered a parolee. And that actually has a different legal standing and a different legal meaning, which I won't get into. But practically speaking, when you enter using advance parole, expect to be pulled out of the regular customs line and to be put into secondary inspection. It didn't always used to be this way, but currently that's the practice. And when you're pulled into secondary inspection, it might be 15 minutes while they quickly check on it and a nice, pleasant experience, or it could be hours where there might be a lot of delay and it could be an unpleasant experience. So just keep that in mind when you're using advance parole. Now, for some general recommendations when you're in this green card process and traveling abroad using advance parole. First of all, make sure that when you're traveling, someone responsible is getting your mail and keeping you informed. What if you and your spouse are having fun abroad and then there's a notice for a RFE, a request for evidence that you must answer, or an interview notice that might give you 3 weeks time to be at the interview? You really don't want to be missing anything from immigration, so make sure you have someone who can do that for you. Secondly, we generally recommend that you not be out too long during the process. Now, this hasn't actually ever happened to us, but it's a possibility that a case could be denied while you're outside of the country. And that would put you in a much worse position than if that denial happened if you're in the country, generally speaking. So we highly recommend that you don't take very extended trips while you're engaging in the green card process. Third, I would caution you never to cut it too close to your advance parole expiration date. So, for example, if you plan a trip and your return date is literally the last date that your advance parole is valid, what if there's bad weather and your plane doesn't take off and you don't return on time? You do not want to be in that situation. So please do not cut it close to your advance parole expiration, because you must enter during that while that's still valid. And lastly, based on what I mentioned before about practically entering with advance parole, that you will likely be pulled into secondary inspection, we generally recommend to our clients not to have connecting flights that are too close in time. Because like I said, you might be in there 15 minutes or it could be hours, depending on how busy the customs officers, the CBP officers are. So plan accordingly and make sure you leave enough time so that you're able to make any connecting flights and things like that. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more insight into traveling abroad and departing the US and coming back while you're engaged in the adjustment of status or the green card process. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks.